Welcome to Barcelona, Spain. We are Android Central. We are here this week for the biggest mobile show of the year. I'm here with Andrew Martinick. My name is Alex Doby.
The biggest mobile show of the year is called Mobile World Congress, by the way.
It
MWC.
sure is, yeah, it sure is, if you didn't already know. And actually, we've had probably some of the biggest announcements of the show already. It feels like we've been here forever. We've had tons of stuff already, and
The show
we're
hasn't
just
started.
getting started.
The show hasn't started yet, technically. It starts tomorrow.
But we've already had new announcements from Samsung, from LG, from Nokia. So let's just dive right into it. The big one, the Samsung Galaxy S9.
Neither of these phones that we're holding, we'll get to these later. They really don't matter in the grand scheme of things. Galaxy S9, Galaxy S9 Plus. I got to see the phones a little over a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, it's always a... I don't want to get into technical mumbo jumbo. We had a few hours with the phones.
Mm-hmm.
And so that means everything that we talk about is kind of based on these early impressions. Everybody is talking about them based on early impressions, but that doesn't mean that you don't have hot takes.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And especially with this kind of TikTok cycle that we have from Samsung now, with the difference or lack thereof from the S8 to the S9.
Right.
Samsung, after overhauling a lot of stuff last year, isn't totally rocking the boat with the S9.
So what are the core things? Camera?
Core things that are different. I would say the biggest thing is the camera, right? You have a physical changing aperture now. So you can change from f1.5 to f2.4. That means you have an ideal situation for shooting in low light and in daylight. And in the S8 Plus, S9 Plus now, you also have the dual camera, just like the Note 8.
And it's, as far as we can tell, the same camera, as the same secondary camera as the Note 8. So it's
Pretty
still
much, yeah.
a 2x telephoto. It's not the new sensor that we talk about that now. The main camera is a completely different sensor from the S8. And that's why they're talking about the camera reimagined and all that kind of stuff. It's not just marketing. They've actually changed the camera. I don't know if they reimagined it. That's a bit of a marketing term there, I suppose. But it's what they're calling a super speed dual pixel camera, which means that it's doing a lot of this multiple frame combination processing. So it takes 12 frames at once when you press the shutter button, combines them into 3 photos, and then further sub-processes those 3 photos. It seems like it would be complicated and take a lot of time, but obviously these are extremely powerful image signal processors in these cameras, and they can put them all together. We don't know exactly how it's going to work out yet, but that sounds a lot like what Google does.
It does, yeah. It sounds, and actually what Samsung was doing last year with multi-frame processing, and it's all just kind of an evolution of where we originally were with the very early days of HDR on phones, where it was just 2 exposures, you'd crunch some numbers, throw them together. Now we're dealing with computational photography in the Pixel and now in the GS9, and no surprise to see that actually the hardware hasn't changed a whole lot outside of the different apertures. Now you just have smarter software crunching the numbers and giving you better photos as a result.
And I think that it's going to actually be a big change. We know that the Galaxy S8 was pretty good, but it was very similar to the Galaxy S7, and so you were kind of looking at this, by the end of it, when you had the Pixel 2 come out, you were looking at a Pixel 2 that was just purely beating the Galaxy S8 straight out in terms of camera, because it was kind of almost a 2-year-old setup at that point.
Yeah.
And I think Samsung noticed that. They spent a lot of time talking about the camera, obviously, because, well, not much else changed. But they talked about the camera a lot and saying, look, we're comparing it directly to what we did before, and it's notably better than that. And I think that it's actually it's gonna turn into something that's actually good. It's not just marketing. Other part of it, 960 frame per second slow motion, which I know Mr. Mobile over there is very excited about.
You can
960 frames per second slow motion.
Yes. If you can hear me, you need a better microphone.
I don't know. You'll never know. So that's just showing the capability of this sensor as well. So you have a sensor that can do 960 frame per second bursts of video, and that's why it doesn't have a problem doing 12 frames, in an instant to... Oh my goodness. I could see
some action behind the camera here from James.
I could see the reflection of that.
We have our cameraman, James.
We are way too hyped.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
That was not slow motion.
I was already talking about multi-frame processing.
That was
totally sidetracked.
Below the camera, fingerprint sensor. It's in a place
Yeah.
where you can reach it.
Finally, yeah.
Hallelujah.
I mean, that was always going to happen. I was surprised it didn't happen on the Note. James, what are you doing behind the camera?
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, so we have finally a fingerprint sensor in a place you can actually reach. The rest of the design hasn't changed a whole lot. No huge surprise there.
They got rid of the gloss around the metal.
Yeah,
so
actually,
that it,
kind of interesting. I mean, everyone else is doing that now. We have the new LG phone. Huawei's doing it now.
New
like
LG
gloss
phone, yeah.
as well. The new old LG phone anyway. But yeah, I mean, kind of interesting. Yeah, they got to do something new. Maybe next year will be
Right.
glossy again. It's just
new
like,
colors. They change it a little
Yeah.
bit. The bigger thing was the functional fingerprint sensor move.
Yeah.
Everything else stays the same. New processor, a
new
couple gigs.
screen, kind of like it has the brightness level of the Note 8
Higher,
now.
yeah, higher brightness. But again, we saw it in the Note 8 already.
Mhm.
It already has crazy color gamut, crazy brightness.
I mean,
no.
like at this point, no surprise, Samsung has the best screen in any Android phone.
No,
That's
not
just what you
surprising at all.
expect at this point.
Seeing a 700 something nit brightness screen,
Yeah.
it's just the best. That's just how it is.
So what else? Android Oreo. Everything else that's new basically is software, right? I mean, you can talk about the camera, the fact you have the new CPU, which helps with that slow-mo
Sure.
video as well.
You
Everything
spent more
else,
time with the software though because you've used the Galaxy S8 with Oreo.
I have, and
it's
actually,
almost identical.
it's almost identical. Actually, a lot of the stuff in the S8 update with Oreo was just about sort of fine-tuning things, getting the performance up there, getting the overall experience a bit more polished. Samsung isn't reinventing the wheel in terms of what they brought in with Samsung Experience 8 a year ago. It's very much of the same family. We're past the days where a year would mean a complete reimagining of Samsung software. So yeah, it's just about bringing the features in Oreo that we already know and love on the Pixel into that Samsung experience. There are a few minor changes in terms
AR
of
emoji.
UI. AR emoji, yeah, that's what we skipped like a minute ahead there. AR emoji is where you land when you want to talk about what is new in software on the S9. So what is it?
Oh my goodness, I'm not that interested in it.
What is it, and why are you a bunny rabbit on Twitter?
It makes basically a Bitmoji style cartoon character in the camera, and then you can put yourself through all kinds of wacky scenarios with masks and filters and all kinds of stupid stuff that you would do it on Instagram, stories, or Snapchat, or Bitmoji, something like that. But the only cool part about it is that Samsung doesn't lock you into anything. It's just a filter mode in the camera. So it's just like switching to portrait mode or whatever. You just swipe over, you get into there, you can reload your character, and you can take a quick video or a photo, and you can send it out anywhere you want. You can put it on Snapchat or whatever. You can send it directly to somebody. It kind of reminds me of a lot of the stuff in the Note 8 with the stylus.
Exactly,
Where
just gonna
everything
say
you
that.
do is just a GIF or a JPEG, and you can share it anywhere you want.
Yeah, and actually Samsung doesn't have that ecosystem that Apple does. So if you create something like that, you really need to be able to just share it anywhere. That
Nobody's
makes
in
sense
the
to do that.
Samsung ecosystem. Remember
Sure.
Chat On?
No,
they shut that down.
I do
They
not
shut
remember
that
Chat
down.
On.
What else in the Galaxy S9? That's basically it.
Pretty much. I mean,
The story is that not a lot changed.
Yeah, not a lot has changed. The camera is, but I mean, this is the thing. We'll need to see just how much better the camera is, and that's one
gonna
of the
make
things
or
that's
break it.
really, really hard to judge in just a few seconds in a briefing. Other thing is battery life. The batteries are the same as they were in the S8
Yeah.
and S8 Plus. Some people are disappointed by that, but obviously, like the big thing there is how much more efficient is the CPU, how much better is Android on Oreo compared to Nougat last year.
True.
And just how much more efficient are things overall running on that same cell. We'll have to wait and see.
I hope it's a lot better based on how the Galaxy S8
So
was.
you've been using the Mini S8 recently, the smaller one of the two, and
Yeah.
Maybe some concerns there in terms of the fact the battery just hasn't changed. capacity
Yeah,
from
that's
the
my
year to
biggest
year.
worry because going into the Galaxy S9, I wanted to reacquaint myself with what the S8 offered. I used it for several weeks at the end before we came here. Battery life was like tossing it on the wireless charger before dinner.
Right.
Because I was down to 15-20% at 5 or 6 o'clock, and we're going to need solid improvement. We need 15% improvement, something like that, before I feel comfortable with that. That's always kind of the thing. We've seen the Plus models and the Notes pick up in sales so much because people don't necessarily want a gigantic phone, but they want that bigger battery.
Yeah, absolutely. And the interesting thing there, as we've touched on so many times before, is if you have a Note, if you have an S8 Plus, what is the reason to upgrade? Is Samsung expecting those people to look at the S9 with sort of lustful, envious eyes? Probably not. Samsung's going after people with S7s, S6s with this release cycle.
Or their competitors that
or
are 2 years old.
HTC, LG, whoever, Apple, obviously.
Yeah. Like, you have an iPhone SE. This, Galaxy S9 probably looks pretty sweet.
Yeah, probably. And just with the kind of release this is, I think it's like the minutiae of this phone. It's going to take a couple of more weeks to kind of get to grips with this and see exactly what is going with the camera, with the battery life, with the software, with AR emojis and all sorts of nonsense to get like a
nonsense.
Well,
right.
I mean, come on,
yeah,
it's nonsense.
I agree. I'm with you.
Accurate term, but yeah, it's going to take an extra couple of weeks just to see, to get a clearer picture of what's going on. On the face of it, the big message is around the camera, but there's a lot more to it, and we'll get to know that, I think, in the next couple of weeks.
Couldn't say it better myself.
Yep.
Let's move on to the thing that's in your hand.
The thing that is in my hand is the LG V30S Plus ThinQ.
My word.
Yeah, that is a bad name for a phone.
How many syllables
so
was
that
in
is
that?
9 syllables we counted. So, this is the rumored successor to the V20, V30 even, that is kind of a moderate upgrade. And we have Derek Kessler slowly moving into frame.
Moderate is very generous.
Derek, do you have the blue version? There we go, blue version. So we have 2 new colors. Let's get into the superficial things just to begin with. We have gray and blue. They're both very, very nice, very, very shiny.
It's kind of a greenish blue.
Yeah. Actually, kind of weird that LG chose to bring out new phones with just updated versions of old colors.
They actually call this new Moroccan blue because they already have a Moroccan blue.
They already have Moroccan
color.
blue. Actually, I mean, you can tell the difference. It's a bit shinier.
It's a little more turquoise,
greenish tint to it. And sitting down with LG was kind of funny to look at what is new in this phone and what isn't, because they are positioning it as a new SKU. So far, we only have confirmed availability in Korea for this thing, but it is the V30S, or V30S ThinQ. 128 gigs of storage, 6 gigs of RAM. 256 gig version is the S Plus ThinQ.
Just like we've seen a couple models of the V30 Plus, like Sprint has, where it just adds more storage and they put a plus on the box.
Exactly, same thing. Still super confusing.
Correct.
A bad name for a phone, but I mean, look, the V30 I think is a good, underappreciated phone.
Known quantity.
Known quantity. All these changes make it better. So what are we looking at? We're looking at software now based on Oreo. We're looking at extra RAM, which obviously helps with multitasking, extra storage.
And just helps in the future if you're going to have a phone longer.
Exactly. And a lot of the new software stuff is based around AI, which is why they have the ThinQ brand. That's their brand for their own AI stuff.
Don't pronounce it think, just like you would think that it would be pronounced. No. ThinQ.
ThinQ.
So if you were paying attention to a lot of the kind of the minutia of the CES announcements from LG, those were all AI based, and they're using ThinQ. It just sounds so stupid when I say it.
Does, yeah.
Is it me or is it the brand?
No, well, it's both, but I mean, it's...
All right. Thank you, James. They apply this ThinQ brand in the same way that Samsung is starting to throw Bixby around as, if it has Bixby or if it has ThinQ, that means it's AI-enabled, machine learning.
Although, thank God you don't have a ThinQ button.
Yeah, ThinQ versus Bixby. Which one is a worse brand?
But anyway, we have ThinQ, and actually ThinQ isn't sort of this central hub. Although on this you can control your LG appliances.
It's not a Bixby competitor in that way.
Not in that respect, and you don't have like ThinQ Home or anything like that. It's all this mess of AI features. Some of which live in the camera, some of which live in Assistant. LG has exclusive Assistant features with Google Assistant through their partnership there, and also a bunch of other stuff in the camera.
Would you like your phone back? Yes, which is in one way smart. Yeah. LG knows that it can't make an assistant to fight Bixby and Google Assistant.
Or maybe they just know that Bixby didn't go so well. No one likes Bixby. Bixby wasn't the most successful launch Samsung has ever had.
So they know, maybe that's in the pipeline in the future, who knows. But right now they know that it's smarter to integrate with Google Assistant. They are a good partner with Google.
Yeah.
So part of this is making things that hook into Google Assistant APIs so that you can talk to Google Assistant and you can say, talk to LG whatever, and you can tell it to turn on your oven or control your robot vacuum or whatever. And this is all house of the future stuff.
On the phone side, you can do something very simple like take a selfie with the front-facing camera. And it says no camera app installed,
there you go.
Which is a great live demo. But if I worded it differently, Let's try this one more time. The rule of live demos. Take a wide-angle selfie. There we go. Okay, that worked. And we can do this. And that actually worked. So there you go.
Take our word for it.
So, that was a great live demo that we could have just faked.
That's an example that it's just putting in extra little hooks rather than trying to do this overarching thing.
Yeah, Google, like LG isn't making its own voice system. It all goes through Google, and
the problem is
with them to do that.
What is here is kind of inconsequential in many ways and not justifying the launch of a new phone.
Yeah.
Because it's not tied into the hardware of a new phone, and it's kind of a little bit forced to call this a V30S ThinQ.
Yeah, there's nothing, I mean, we went over this many times yesterday on meeting with LG. There's nothing here that really requires this to be a new SKU. They could have just said, hey, here's a 6GB, 128GB V30, and by the way, we have this new software update that has all this amazing new AI stuff. And actually, by the way, they said a lot of this will be ported back to the original 4GB V30, so there's really nothing at a hardware level that is required in this phone to run this AI stuff.
So let's talk about the one other thing that has AI tacked onto it is the camera.
Exactly, yeah. So we have a video up now that you can go and look at that shows you all the AI features in this camera. You have Q-Lens, which is basically LG's version of Bixby Vision.
Or Google Lens.
Or Google Lens. Works about as well as Bixby. I wouldn't really call it a lens competitor. It's not as good as Lens by any stretch of the imagination. You can do visual shopping through Amazon, take a picture of a can of beer or a phone. You can buy those on Amazon probably if it sells them. You can do visual search through Pinterest, so if you want to find other pictures like the thing that you're looking at, because I guess people like to do that.
So that's
also a thing you can do, QR codes, whatever, people love QR codes.
We pointed out with Bixby Vision, and we just talked about this as well, because Bixby Vision got a few new features with the Galaxy S9, and we just haven't really been wowed by this visual recognition stuff.
I would argue that like the exception to that probably is Google Lens, just because of the way it works, and
because it leverages such a huge knowledge base.
Huge knowledge base, all the information in your Google account, and actually it does work a lot better just in the real world. I've just scanned James into visual search, and it's given me this like guy with a shotgun.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
Like 19th century samurai.
Pictures of people, because he's behind a tripod, so it's pictures of people with like staves and easels,
various robes and capes, very epic.
So looking. This is kind of the thing. It's not that useful most of the time. How often are you pointing a camera at something and you want to take a picture and you're like, "What is that?"
0 times.
Well, people
never.
Turns out people are very good at recognizing what things are.
That's
and
the
so
thing. Yeah.
You're like, "Tell me, is this a beer can?" I don't know. Let's ask Q-Lens. It doesn't matter. So the only part of this that actually is using AI not properly but maybe usefully is the image recognition and taking photos,
in a lot more sort of user-friendly way. And you can see this in our hands-on video, the way you have this sort of cloud of words that describes what it sees. Right. I'm pointing it at James. It's moved to pet mode.
But I'm
pointing it at sleeping Kevin Mitchelluk over on the left.
And so what happens is you get this little cloud. You get this little cloud of words that pops up over the interface, showing what it sees. And then down in the corner of the interface, it shows you. Oh yeah, is that a little koala? Is that what it says for pet?
For pet, yeah, or yeah.
Maybe it's like a dog, bear thing.
Yeah.
No, it's a person.
Okay, yeah. So it's a person.
So this is very similar to what so many other camera apps do, and specifically I think of the Mate 10 Pro.
Exactly, yeah.
Where in the bottom right-hand corner, it just shows you that we have identified that this is a plant, so we tweaked the settings of the camera to take a better plant photo. Now, who knows what a better plant photo is, and I think if you were just a good photographer, you'd just figure it out yourself. Yeah. And not knowing, you don't think about, well, I'm taking a photo of a plant, so I should set my exposure value to this.
Yeah.
No, you just see what works for your eyes.
You kind of look at this mode, and it's very cool to look at, it and actually see the phone recognizing things as you move through.
It demos.
A lot of that is just kind of theater, and it doesn't make it particularly much better at taking photos. It runs into the problem of all sort of advanced photo features in phones, which is that if it's good enough in auto mode, chances are you don't need all this extra fluff to make it take a great photo.
Think about the Pixel 2. It does not do any of this stuff. It just takes amazing photos, and then you share them, and you get more likes and comments on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
That's what matters. Not having something that identifies James as a koala.
Yeah. So bottom line, LG
No,
V30
bright mode.
bright mode. Of course. Yeah, I almost forgot. So actually, yeah, the camera hardware in this
See
thing.
koalas in the dark.
You can see koalas in the yeah, camera hardware unchanged. You can actually
16 megapixel camera still.
16 plus 13
Small
for wide
pixels.
angle, exactly the same as the regular V30, but they have this new brighter mode now, where it uses pixel binning to take the 16 megapixel image, crunch the numbers, turn it into a brighter 4 megapixel image with less noise, with brighter colors, with
It
just
works.
better general clarity, and it works really well.
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing where on OnePlus you have it on the second lens and it kind of works okay, but it's a bit situational. This actually, we've used it in the real world the past day or so.
And you can turn it on and off.
Yeah,
so
you
we
can.
get a
So
side by
it doesn't
side.
actually, like in the current firmware, which is not final that we have on this, so bear that in mind. But you go into a darker area, it gives you the option. You get a little buzz from the haptic motor. Tap the button, then it gives you, jumps into bright mode, and at the end of it, you get a 4 megapixel image that hopefully, and in our experience most of the time, looks a lot brighter, a lot clearer, just a lot better. Really great way of addressing one of the sort of relative weaknesses of the V30 camera there.
So anybody that was going to buy a V30, you might as well just chill for a second, buy a V30S.
If it's available in your country, which we still don't know.
If
it's
is.
coming to Korea.
You might as well
knows about
chill for a
anywhere else?
minute just to see if it is coming to your country.
Yeah.
Wait a few weeks. Like, that's just going to be fine. If you can't wait, you're not missing anything. You would rather just have a phone for the next month or two rather than wait for this thing to come out.
Exactly.
Or you would be like normal people and you would just cross shop and you'd be buying something else instead.
Yeah, and that's why it's
You're
weird.
not going to wait for this.
So my sort of bottom line for this is, last year LG had the G6 and it got steamrolled by the GS8. This year they have a different strategy, but the result is the same, that people are going to care about this for maybe a few weeks, then it gets steamrolled by the GS9.
Right.
LG has been, subtle and also not subtle about the fact they have something else coming later in the year.
Yep.
You got to imagine some of this software that is on here now is like an early version of what we'll eventually see on that phone. But
it'd be more of a complete thought at that point.
This keeps them briefly relevant. It keeps people talking about LG. Maybe that's all they need. It's still a pretty good phone. Probably, who knows if you'll ever be able to buy it.
So let's move on and talk about a company that's probably going to sell more high-end phones than LG this year.
Really?
Yes.
Really? Then okay.
Yes.
So this is the Nokia.
LG's sales are not very good.
So this is the Nokia 8
Sirocco.
And it's one of
The branding could use some work.
Yeah, so it's one of what?
They launched
half a dozen phones.
They launched
today?
5 phones today.
Yeah, so
We only care about 2 of them.
we have new feature phones. We got the banana phone. Whatever, who cares about that?
Yep.
We have
Hey,
Android
hey.
One.
Don't knock the banana phone. Sorry, that was
Okay,
a
Derek Kessler, come on.
No. We don't need him to defend the banana phone.
I'm making a video on the banana phone right now. Okay. You're gonna crap all over it. I'm spending 4 hours over it. Go ahead.
Okay.
Feature phone aside,
Michael Fisher is very angry about the banana phone.
they also made an Android Go phone.
They sure did.
It's $85, whatever. Moving on.
No. So
James, can you make some more noise over there?
James is. Sorry. James is getting.
Oh, prop comedy. This is exactly what we need.
What's gonna be?
Hello. Okay. Yeah, here we go. The Nokia 8110. The familiar banana phone, no slider on this one. It's a prototype, but it's the curve. It's the curve of your face. This is what it's designed for.
What can we throw it?
Has an innovative peel design.
I won't open the. Somebody's gonna have to eat it if we open the banana.
Yeah.
Okay, but the phone that matters, the phone that we have.
No, wait a
here,
minute. I want to talk Android Go because this is.
Oh,
this is
jeez.
well, no, very briefly. This, even if you look at it, this is very much sort of the Moto G sort of idea. Back before Moto G became this.
And
sort
before Android 1, the
before-
original version existed.
Yeah, before Motorola got Lenovo'd and Moto G became this weird thing that was a lot more higher priced and was never updated. this is more like Google's original vision of what the Moto G was supposed to be, that really sort of transformed into Android One. Even the design actually is very similar to some.
And then now the Moto G costs $350.
Exactly, yeah. So now this is approaching, I think it's what, 85 euros or 80 euros.
Equivalent of $85 US.
Yeah.
So depending on the market, it's going to be very strategically marketed. But their big thing is, it looks like a Nokia design, which is great.
A little bit
Moto. It is a little Motorola-y in terms of it has swappable back shells.
Yeah.
It has that solid color polycarb that you can scratch and it doesn't fall apart with a white face on it. But what they're doing is they're making very strategic choices to have an IPS LCD on the front. It has 8 gigs of storage. It runs Android Go edition, so it has all these optimized apps and all that kind of stuff. It's not going to be a terrible phone for $85.
Yeah, which is the bottom line there.
That's the whole point.
We also have a refreshed version of the Nokia 6, which is fine. It's been in China for like a few months now.
Yeah.
Nokia 7 Plus,
which is really nice. I actually do want to talk about that one.
And actually, that kind of got buried a little bit by the Sirocco today, but the 7 is really nice, and the texture of the metal, the price, the quality of the internals, the software experience on there. All of Nokia's phones now are going to be Android One going forward.
Yep.
Which is a huge deal and actually changes the game in terms of what Android One is all about.
And so Android One, if you need to be brought up to speed because it gets thrown around a lot and nobody explains it, including myself sometimes, it's not a different version of the software. It's not like Android Go that has all these restrictions on it. It's just a clean Google version, similar to like the old Nexus style, not as feature packed as the Pixels, but it's a version of software that Google signs off on and says, we approve of this. This is something that we would put our name behind, and we would put the Android name up front and say, okay, now we're going to help you make sure that you get software updates for 2 years. It's going to get these regular security updates more frequently.
I mean, that's a Nokia thing, not necessarily an Android One thing. That's,
but
they get the extra mile to.
They get support from Google now that they know what they're working with.
Yeah, and actually, really interesting now to see where we've. I mean, back in the day, Android One was in developing markets. It was basic stock KitKat, really low end stuff. Now it's the Snapdragon 835. It's a high-end phone with a curved screen, high-end materials, really fast performance.
Don't get confused. That's the 8 Sirocco, not the 7 Plus.
That's the 8 Sirocco, not the 7 Plus, but it's all Android One.
Yes.
And it's like this family of products now, almost in the same way. And I think there was an editorial this week that made this point on Droid Life, that it's almost a little bit taking up the mantle of what the Google Play Edition devices wanted to be back in the day, where it's everyone,
way better executed.
But way better executed with big manufacturer support and hopefully carrier support and sales in the tens of millions that the GP editions were never able to reach.
This is extremely smart from Nokia, whatever.
Nokia.
It's very smart because they were already shipping this kind of software. They weren't doing a ton of customization. Android One still allows customization, just like we saw in the Moto X4 Android One version. Nokia still has their own camera app.
HTC with Android One has Edge Sense, all that stuff.
They can add these things in, but it's only up to a certain point. I mean, I'm looking. They have a custom lock screen on here, or a custom always on display here. They can do things. They're not locked in like a Google Play Edition, which was a little bit onerous, and manufacturers wanted to do different things and they couldn't.
It's also like the manufacturers back then were sort of strong-armed into doing it by Google, and no one, Google didn't want to support it because they had Nexuses. The manufacturers didn't really want to support it because no one bought them. This is more, I see this relationship with sort of Nokia and Google, and actually both sides are happy with where things are now, to the point where Nokia is really putting the energy of their whole brand behind Android One, and it's actually a differentiator for them. So they can say they have Oreo where, most Samsung phones still haven't been updated.
Right. And so I want to talk about the 7 Plus because I'm working on a write-up on it, and my working headline right now is that it's a Pixel 2 XL for the frugal crowd, because it's a €400 phone, but it's the same style, size, shape, everything as a Pixel 2 XL. It's got this kind of ceramic coating, it's lightly textured metal back, aluminum unibody, 6-inch 18:9 display with the 2.5D curved glass on it, metal frame. rear-mounted fingerprint sensor, and it has this software experience that's very similar when you turn on the phone and unlock it as a Pixel 2 XL. But of course, at 400 euros, it's half the price. And of course, it has, it's not going to have the same camera experience as that. It's not going to have the same processor as a Snapdragon 660. But again, half the price. Snapdragon 660 with 4 gigs of RAM, dual rear cameras. It's got a lot of stuff going for it. And this is like amazing for people that don't like this look of all these phones getting more and more expensive. Not everybody can afford that.
It's a good counterpoint as well to the other side of that sort of affordable flagship market. You have the OnePlus and Honor brands that just go all in on specs, but not necessarily on user experience, stability.
And this is $100 cheaper than those.
Exactly, yeah. So you don't necessarily get the very best, the very fastest SoCs, but you do get the quality experience, the great camera, and the promise of regular updates thanks to Android One, thanks to everything Nokia is doing there.
Right. In some ways, yes, this Nokia brand has all of this cachet behind it, this history behind it, but it's a different company running this. This is H&D Global running this company, and
we should say a lot of the same people behind the scenes,
course,
and a lot of the same design language and partnerships.
But what this does is by partnering with Google, the people that are kind of on the fence about this, like they haven't had a Nokia phone since the original 8110, they like to see that Google is behind it, and that kind of is going to permeate through, and it actually will end up meaning something as well.
Yeah.
But it helps them know that there's something more behind it with such a young rebirth of this company.
So let's wrap things up because we're running a bit late here. Let's get to this guy right here, Nokia 8 Sirocco, and this is very much
not your grandmother's Nokia 8.
No, and actually very different to a lot of the design language that we were looking at in the 6 and the 7 as well. So we have, and you can go watch a full hands-on video of this now, but you have curved glass front and back, stainless steel frame, Snapdragon 835 inside, 6 gigs of RAM,
128 storage.
Yeah, it's
quick charge 4, 3260 milliamp hour battery, wireless charging.
Pretty much. I mean, okay, you missed
dual
out on
curved POLED display.
No 845, which people are freaking out about, but whatever. But I mean, this for Nokia really is just taking things to the next level in terms of what can they do on the design front to sort of differentiate.
Yeah, flip it around to the front.
Let's see. There's the display. I'm not sure how well it's going to come out on camera.
It has shades of Galaxy S6 Edge to me, in that it's extremely thin.
Yeah. So it's 5.5-inch screen. So
16 by 9 display, which kind of reminds me of that as well. And it comes down. It's like 7.3 millimeters thick, so it comes down to a very fine point. They were at pains to say that 95% of the phone is covered in glass, which it sounds neat, but then you want to hold things other than glass.
Exactly.
But,
and actually, if you look at the contact points on the left and right side, that's a big deal with all the Samsung phones because it's the point where you're supposed to grip it, and
there's nothing to grip.
Well, there's very little to grip. It's this sort of sliver of metal that you have on the side, and that's going to take a lot of getting used to for a lot of people.
And it makes the buttons on the side, although this is not a finished unit, but it makes the buttons on the side very hard to press as well because there's nowhere for them to go inside. They packed a ton of stuff into an insanely small package.
And I think this is an exercise in fan service, but it's also an exercise in brand development and what can we say about Nokia as a brand that isn't just about the mid-range as it sort of was last year, but that it's they can put out a flagship that is just as impressive as a lot of the bigger names now in smartphones.
Because at 750 euros, they're not gonna sell a lot of these, but for every person that looks at this and sees that, wow, Nokia is serious about this, and then buys a 7 Plus instead, they're totally happy with that. And that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's about brand identity. It's about establishing Nokia as, okay, it's still a player in the market now. Whereas I think right now, especially in Europe, I don't know about in the States, you talk about a Nokia phone, almost automatically it means a feature phone, which of course they still make.
And they're still serious about feature phones.
Yeah,
but,
for sure. Anyway.
This is really cool, and people are hyped about this phone and the 7 Plus to a lesser extent. And there are analyst numbers showing that they're close to like 10 million smartphones sold
I think it was
last year.
70.
And they shipped 70 million total phones
Yeah.
between smartphones and feature phones. So, obviously they're still heavy in feature phones, but when you're talking about coming kind of back out of nowhere to sell 10 million smartphones and clearly being on the upswing, we're going to have to pay attention to this company again.
And it's devices like this that I think are going to lead the way in that respect.
Right.
So, yeah. Super interesting to see that.
And that was the last thing of the day.
So what do we have tomorrow? We got events from Sony. We have what else is going on?
Oh goodness!
This is where we have to.
Most of the big things have happened. But,
yeah. So what do we have tomorrow? Let's. This is great.
I know Sony.
We got Sony. We have potentially a very interesting device that will be showing off from Vivo.
And there's an Asus event.
There's an Asus event on Tuesday. So
is
the rest
that
of the week? That's Tuesday.
Oh, okay. Calendars.
Yep, calendars are hard. We also have some stuff going on with Huawei. We'll have some interesting stuff there. They've already made announcements around drivable, with self-driving cars, which would be interesting to see. And yeah,
we'll be back. We'll be back to talk about it either way.
Absolutely. So stick with us. Subscribe to Android Central here on YouTube. We'll have a lot more coming from MWC. Behind the scenes stuff coming on Instagram, and of course,
smash that like button.
Do it now. And we'll have articles and all that usual good stuff on the site. So we're going to sign off now. Thanks for watching. We will see you next time.
So long.